Hello. Thank you for joining Talent Trust September 2020 Executive Briefing. Protect your company culture for recovery and growth. If you experience technical difficulties during the webinar today, please let us know in the chat and we'll do our best to help you. We're happy that you're here today. We will also use the chat feature today for questions throughout the webinar. So as they occur to you, please put them there and Kathleen will address them in the end. Today's briefing is presented by Kathleen Quinn Votaw, founder and CEO of Talent Trust and author of Solve the People Puzzle. Kathleen is also an experienced keynote speaker, and throughout the pandemic, shutdown, and recovery, she's continued to share her message virtually with business leaders. Put your people first, everything else will follow. Kathleen also recently completed a Stanford School of Business Graduate School of Business course focused on strategy, innovation, and organizational design. And she recently celebrated her graduation from this course. Her friends, her team, her family, and her mentors are all very proud of her. Congratulations, Kathleen. Our discussion today will be focused on culture and employment brand. In 2020, the workplace culture is changing faster than any of us could have imagined. Kathleen will share insights and specific recommendations for protecting your culture during this time and avoiding possible long-term erosion of your employment brand. It's my pleasure to introduce Kathleen Quinn Votaw.
Ta-da! Hello! We're doing it a little differently today. Erin's signing off, I'm signing on. We're gonna be on video a little bit and sometimes not. But thank you, Erin, for that wonderful introduction. I'm excited to be here today with you to talk about protecting your culture, your environment, everything that you built. Because now more than ever, we have to take care of each other, take care of our people, take care of our environment, our culture, our engagement, and we're going to talk about some specific tools to do that today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off video, so it's not to distract you, focus on the content, and then Erin and I are both going to come back on screen to take Q&A. So Erin mentioned to you, make sure you load up the Q&A in the chat function because we want to make sure we answer your questions and get to your content. So I'm just going to hop back off of here and let's focus on the content today. So what I want to go over with you is we've prepared this wonderful hiring guide for the recovery. It covers 6 key areas: culture and brand, strategic HR, recruiting imperatives, retention and tech tools, and then putting America back to work. What we're going to focus on today is culture and brand and defending it to the very end. And we have this particular guide on our website at talenttrust.com. So right now, while you're on this executive briefing with me, go ahead and download it so you can refer to it. But today, in our quick briefing, we're really going to focus on protecting your culture and avoiding long-term erosion in your employment brand. So let's get busy on all of this. So we're in the midst of so much change, not a little bit of change. We're in the midst of a lot of change. Your culture and your brand and your environment are so important. You need to have your culture and brand involved with every decision that you make because it matters. It's a fundamental change. People are working from home. People are working from the office. People are scared out of their wits. We have unprecedented change, the times that are affecting your people. They don't know what to do. We've got 6 generations in the workforce. We're tossing out traditional views all over the place of what work should look like. We're using data, we're using artificial intelligence, we're using robots in some cases. Now suddenly we're catapulted into this new virtual reality, and many difficult decisions and financial decisions have to be made. But in order to do this, you really have to use who you are to navigate these decisions. Don't forget what made you successful. Don't forget the values that matter to your employees, to your clients, to each other, to your families, to make sure that your culture and brand are at the center of every decision that you make. And there's a lot going on. Okay, so we're working remotely. We've got viruses trying to kill us. We've got constant communication, hopefully. We've got digital meetings. Those of us who are accustomed to being empathetic and caring and compassionate, this is our happy place, but there's a lot of people that doesn't come naturally. And then in the midst of all of it, we have people who might not be performing up to their standards or your standards. So many workers are still remote. They don't know how to re-engage. They might continue to do so for a long time. Some might have to come back to work. We need flexibility on all sides. So trust and a sense of well-being might have been damaged along the way in the last couple months. In the absence of information, guess what people do? They make up their own stories. And if you're not telling them what's happening with incredible transparency, they're not going to know and they're not going to trust. So that trust and that empathy are really important. A couple of things I want to talk about regarding all of these changes that are coming at us so quickly. Digital meetings. Have you noticed that some people join digital meetings and they might have their camera on, they might have their camera off, they might join by audio, they might just listen. Set up some standards and expectations. Always video, always audio. It's because a lot of communication is nonverbal. I want to see how my people show up. I want to see how my clients show up. How are they dressing? Are they wearing baseball caps, athletic gear, or are they actually at least making an effort to dress for the work environment? Make sure they have the tools. Really good cameras and really good microphones are really important to make sure that people can show up digitally. Remember that everyone is hurting in some way, and it's really important to listen to them and listen to how these times are affecting them and their family with caring and empathy. Now, that leads me to training your supervisors and your hiring managers. So some of you on the call today, there's quite a few of you here with us today, and I appreciate you joining us. You know, you might be responsible for a department or a couple people. We have to give our hiring managers, the people we entrust our company to, some training because they don't know what to do. You know, they're scared themselves. So make sure that we give them some training for the immediate leaders and supervisors. Make sure they are fully informed with what's happening, what to expect, what to anticipate, as I like to say, the worst case scenario to the best case scenario. Talk about culture and environment and what you expect of people. And don't assume, let's not make assumptions that people know what your expectations are. I've had many conversations with business owners that go something like this. Shouldn't they just know? They should tell me X, Y, Z. Well, they don't. Everything's changing for them. Digital meetings, working remotely, over-communicating. And if you don't lay out some expectations soon, they're just not going to know how to engage. The next point is don't let accountability slip. Just because you can't see them, touch them, feel them in the office doesn't mean you can't have accountability standards. So we in our company and some of our other companies have accountability pathways. What does good look like? What should I be doing? What are my top 3 priorities? If I do this first and second, are these the right priorities for me to be focused on right now? I believe in weekly, at minimum, communication with your direct reports, because in a 5-day period, things can change pretty rapidly. If you can do daily, great, but I think that's a little harder to be able to achieve. So constant communication, frequently, transparently, two-way, and consistently is what matters. So frequent, daily, weekly updates. And you know what? If you're a business owner or business leader, people want to hear from you. So don't forget, don't just delegate communication about who you are, about your culture, and who you are in your environment and your employment brand to your leaders. Make sure you show up as the CEO. And I don't care if you've got 10 employees or 10,000 employees. They want to hear from you. They want honesty, transparency, trust. If you have to let me go, how are you going to let me go? When are you going to let me go? What are the circumstances? By the way, do you have enough cash to keep us going? Is anybody talking about cash? I got to tell you, one of the reasons people leave is because they are worried about our company's financial stability. So if you leave that out of the communication, they're going to quit you because you didn't give them any information. Two-way communication is so key. Don't just push information out. Allow your people to share with you, whether you automate it through tools like TinyPulse or Amplify or SurveyMonkey, or you hold town halls. You have people submit some questions to the CEO anonymously. Make sure you're listening, because that's the majority of communication. Good listening skills is the foundation of communication. And make sure it's consistent. Don't tell your sales team one thing and your operations team another thing, and then your customers another thing. Make sure you're consistent. Caring and empathy is the next one I want to talk about. And I got to tell you, it doesn't come natural to a lot of people. Many of us have filters, attitudes, and beliefs. Sometimes we don't think we should have personal relationships with the people who work with us. And those are valid. I mean, I honor the way anybody thinks about how they should show up at work. However, your leaders, your supervisors, your managers need some training in what does empathy mean in a business arrangement. In a business arrangement, it means, dare I say, love in the workplace, understanding that a lot of people who work for us right now are trying to be caregivers to elder parents who might be at risk, to young children who can't go to school because the school districts are shut down. They can't travel because they have a pre-existing condition. There are so many factors. We can't make assumptions, and we have to be caring and empathetic to everyone's situation. Frequent communication and making sure that you're transparent is key. Also, make sure that you manage performance. Just because we are in a situation that is, I'm calling it crazy, crazy, unprecedented, never seen anything like it in my 54 years, doesn't mean you get to perform to a lower standard. I expect, and many of our clients have set up really great expectations of what good performance looks like in the new reality. So make sure you communicate, what does good look like in the new reality? And don't settle for shitty performance. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say that, but I did. Here I go. I always say something I'm not supposed to. So make sure you're focused on keeping your people safe to the degree you can. Don't go overboard. Make sure you have an environment that they come back to, sanitation, masks, wash your hands, and get back to business. And then when you have to let your people go, compassion. Do you know that it's hard to believe, but people adapt faster to a loved one's death than they do to being unemployed or let go? It is a loss of identity, a loss of dignity. So if you can give people grace and compassion and understanding and reasons why you're letting them go, make sure you are very open and fair and kind in the process, because this ain't over. And unfortunately, so many companies are still going to have to let some people go because they might not have the revenue or the cash to keep them. So you might have to. So make sure you're compassionate and caring, because Losing a job is more devastating sometimes to some people than the death of a loved one. And our HR people, it is, if you're on the call, step up, step in, and this is your opportunity to be a hero. This is your opportunity to change the perception of HR as just a payroll, employee benefits, processing environment. Step up, step in, understand how your role will affect everyone in the organization. You can give them tools, you can train on empathy, compassion, communication, really how to bring people back to work in creative and new ways. Read some data from Josh Burson. He has a great article on reset. Take the time to reinvent HR and be the hero that I know you can be. And last but not least, before we go to Q&A, I really believe we need to put our fellow Americans back to work as much as possible. There's still 8 to 10 million people out of work right now. I think the unemployment rate is 8.3. We got to put people back to work. I mean, we got to get our company back on track. Now, the good news is the unemployment rate in August was predicted to be 9.8. Guess what? Good news, it was only 8.3. We want to bring that down even lower. So look to our country first. Make sure your recruitment processes look at our great country of America. 22% of people polled have, in the last 6 months, have left their city and moved. A lot of people are migrating right now. Do you know there's some cities people don't want to live in because of the civil unrest, not because of the virus. So people are leaving New York. I love New York, but people are leaving New York. People are leaving Portland. They're leaving Seattle. People are leaving Chicago. How are you? Are you prepared to take those great people in? Let's hire our fellow Americans first, and let's put millions of people back to work. So I want to take some Q&A now. I'm going to turn the camera back on so you can see both Erin and I. She's going to read the questions. Come on in, Erin. Here we are.
Yes.
We're together.
There we are. Hello.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello. I'm Charlotte.
And we do have a few questions, but I think there is an example we as a team were talking about yesterday that I thought would be appropriate to share.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our team interviews candidates all day, all night, all the time. It's what they do. And one of our team members was sharing just this past Monday a story of a candidate that they interviewed for a sales position. And when this particular member of our team got to the question about results, behavioral question about results, this candidate said, well, I'm working remotely now, so I don't know how I could be measuring my results. To which this member of our team was appalled, right? Obviously, not the candidate for this job, but this to us, when we were discussing it, was an indicator that this particular member of that team, whoever they may be, isn't being managed, right? Performance isn't being managed, right? Expectations aren't being set, and this individual is working virtually for the first time. Everybody has a cross to bear. Nobody knows where people come from, and I imagine that, and I would hope that this individual's managers and leaders were being caring and compassionate and empathetic, like we've said, but it also seems to me that in that case, this individual's performance isn't being managed, right? Perspective that, you know, just because you're working remotely, there aren't results. And we here at Talent Trust, we've always been remote. We know that to be untrue. So sometimes those things can run contrary. Caring and empathy can seem contrary to managing performance and setting expectations. They can coexist very harmoniously, and don't assume that they can't.
Good job.
Right? I just felt that was a good
question.
Yep. Yep. So this question.
Hi, Chuck. Thanks for your question.
Yes. Hi, Chuck. Some employees have gotten comfortable working from home. It works for some companies, but not for all. And that creates a sense of inequity. If someone does not have a legitimate reason to stay at home, how would you approach this, Kathleen?
So that's happening everywhere. It's happening everywhere. I just don't feel safe. I don't want to come back. And here's the challenge. The burden is on the employer. We now, have you ever heard of the expectation making reasonable accommodations? So the definition of reasonable accommodations has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we have to provide in our state a definition of what that reasonable accommodation will be. So I suggest that whoever you're asking on behalf of, that they sit down with the employee to help understand, or employees, why they don't want to re-enter. Work with an employment attorney in your state to really set up what the guidelines are. Just because they don't want to come back doesn't mean they shouldn't come back. There is also positions that can work from home, and some positions can't work from home. So in your position descriptions, it really is important as you build them moving forward. Is this position eligible for work from home? So there aren't inequities moving forward. So people understand when they take on the role, these are the positions who can work from home and these that cannot work from home. If you're running a manufacturing plant and you're building medical devices, those people can't work from home, I'm sorry. If you're a healthcare provider, they can't work from home, they're in patient care. So there are certain positions that are not work from home friendly. And then there are positions that are. I suggest you organize your org chart. These are work from home friendly, these positions are not. So that perception of inequity is eradicated, and we talk about it and we put it in front and center. So those are some of the things I would talk about, and I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one as well, Chuck. We have some more questions that have popped up. Go ahead, Erin, come back in the frame.
And those decisions about which positions are and are not, those are big decisions, right? So take care in those decisions, because the decisions you make now will affect your workplace culture and your employment brand moving forward. Thank you, Christy, for your question. Yes, you will have access to this presentation. Everybody who registered for the webinar today will receive a follow-up email that includes the deck, as well as a link to the recording of this. So you will have access to that.
And don't forget to go to our website and download the hiring guide, which has a ton of information, including what I covered today and even more. So we've got quite a few more questions I want to make sure I get to.
Yep. Okay. What if an organization did not have a lot of remote workers before March and now they're managing both?
It's true.
What is one specific action item that you should be aware of when you're trying to manage those two different populations?
So first, expectations, 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 and don't assume people know how to work from home. I had a call from one of our clients in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. It was probably mid-April, and he was so pissed off at his top salesperson because he took a phone call from the CEO, the owner, and he was out walking the dog. Well, the owner called me and said, Kathleen, doesn't he know not to talk to me when he's walking the dog? And I said, Jeff, he doesn't. So we can't make assumptions that people know how we want them to show up virtually. So the number one step is put together a kind of tiger team. I'm part of Vistage International, and we call them tiger teams, with employees and top managers. What are the questions that we need to answer, and what are the assumptions we all have about working from home? And document what your expectations are from working from home. That's step number one. What's next, Erin?
Yeah, I like this question a lot, and it ties to a piece you mentioned. Some leaders are hesitant to share full financial information and full transparency, especially if the news is not positive. You talked about cash and stability. What would you recommend as a starting place to overcome this hesitation?
Yeah, I understand that. It's hard to share everything. And some of us have open book mentalities. That's kind of the way I'm made, but some of us really don't, and that's okay. It's privately held businesses usually, and you don't want to share that information. But no, if you don't share it, they're going to make up their own stories. They're going to go home and talk to their spouse, their significant other, their goldfish, their dog. If they're younger people, they're going to talk to their parents, and they're going to make up stories. So, and they're usually not good stories. They're usually just not good stories. They're bad stories. So I suggest strongly that you pick an important financial metric and report it to your people, because if you don't, they'll make assumptions and they'll quit you. Pick one. Go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, no, good. This last question. I'm still reducing my staff based on what's happening in 2020. So how or why should I focus on culture when reduction is my current reality?
Can you restate the question?
Yeah. While there's still focus on reducing staff, why should culture still be top of mind?
Okay.
And how do I do that when I'm still trying to exit members of the team?
Because your core culture matters. You've got to know who you are during good times and bad times, and your employees want an environment that they can thrive in, whether you have 50 people, 10 people, or 500 people. So that is a guiding principle in any company. You know, culture and engagement are sexy words that have been overused a million times. So forget about the culture for a minute, but what you want to do is know who you are, what you stand for, what your culture, your attitude, what your attitudes, beliefs, and traditions are. And even if you have to reduce your staff, that is your guiding principle. You have to protect that to the very end and navigate every decision through those that culture, which I define as attitudes, beliefs, traditions, and who you are. It's so important. I know we have to go soon. We have another Q&A here. Come on, Annie.
Yeah, Stuart, thank you for this one. I'm finding that while some can work from home, developing them in their careers may not lend itself to work from home. Are you seeing this as well? And how would you address?
Developing, there's great training. I know a lot of speakers who do webinars to help with training. So developing is about leadership development. Who do they want to be? Okay, so there's a lot of different things you can train people on. Depending on your budget, you could have a book of the quarter club with people. It could be that inexpensive, or you can bring in a speaker like me or another speaker. There's a great speaker, Dave Nelson, who teaches people things about technology. Lots of trainers are doing things virtual now. It's more cost effective because they don't have to get on a plane and travel. So developing your leaders and supervisors can be done in a more intimate way. Small bite-sized pieces, because we were all very famous for going into a training room for 3-day-long days or even a full day. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not consumable all the time, and people are distracted, and people need information in bite-sized pieces to go back and do something about it. So see this, Stuart, as an opportunity. You know, finding some people can work from home is great. Develop them is hard. We have a great partner on our website that does a lot of leadership development virtually. So I really do believe it's achievable. And if you wanted to have a chat about your specific situation, I could give you specific answers for you. So thank you very much. So we're going to close because it's 11:28. I'm going to have my friend. Well, look, didn't we do good today? We adapted to technology.
Fun to be together. No, it's really fun to be together. It's always fun to be with Kathleen. I mean, who wouldn't say that? Thank you all for joining us. I just want to remind everybody that our briefing will occur again next month. The date of that is October 27th. 11 o'clock Mountain Time, 30 minutes. We're focused on making these efficient and valuable. Thank you all for your participation and questions, and we look forward to continuing to stay in touch.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel where you can see my spastic, presentations and good content. It's KQV Speaks on YouTube. Take care, everyone.